Good evening, you're watching London Live News at 6 with Helena Wadia. Coming up tonight, Rishi Sunak is filmed saying he diverted public money from deprived urban areas towards more prosperous towns. We'll be taking a look at the Conservative leadership race between him and Liz Truss. 1 in 3 women say a lack of confidence would stop them from starting a business. We'll hear from a local business owner about how she took the leap to be her own boss. We'll have an update on London's weather in the next 10 minutes as the capital is told to prepare for another heatwave. Plus, we'll hear from the cast of new action movie Bullet Train set in Japan, including Hollywood star Brad Pitt. And our resident art reviewer James Nichols will be here to tell us about the best exhibitions on across the capital, from African fabrics at the V&A to surrealism at the Tate Modern. First tonight, though, a clip has emerged of Conservative leadership contender Rishi Sunak saying he diverted public money from deprived urban areas towards more prosperous towns. The former Chancellor bragged that he had started changing public funding formulas. Well, the New Statesman, who obtained the video, said the comments were made to grassroots Tories in Kent last week. Well, Labour called the remarks scandalous, but Mr Sunak's campaign defended the video, saying levelling up isn't just about city centres, it's also about towns all over the country that need help too. That's what he changed in the Green Book, and he will follow through as Prime Minister. Well, it comes as Sunak tried to make up ground against Foreign Secretary Liz Truss to win the backing of party members who will choose the next Prime Minister. On Sky News' debate last night, he warned Liz Truss's economic strategy will damage the nation after she insisted her tax cuts could avert the recession forecast by the Bank of England.
Liz said something before, which I'm just going to correct. It's not the tax burden that is causing the recession. That's simply wrong. What's causing the recession is inflation. Right? That's the root of the problems we have, not just here, but in America and elsewhere. So the way we're going to get through this, first and foremost, is gripping inflation. Now, we will, and I always have stood by people, as you've seen me over the last couple of years, so I will help people get through the autumn and the winter, as I've done before, and then we will make the right reforms to help grow the economy in the long term. And I don't think the corporate tax proposals...
So you would come up with more money to help people get through the hardship?
Of course I would.
Do you know how much?
Well, we'll have to see the size of the problem. But look, people can see
13.3% inflation is what's predicted. That's the size of the problem.
And I don't want that to be worse. And I don't want it to last longer. So what I'm not going to do is embark on a borrowing spree worth tens of billions of pounds, put that on the country's credit card, ask our kids and our grandkids to pick up the tab, because that's not right, it's not responsible, and it's certainly not Conservative.
Well, what the Bank of England have said today is, of course, extremely worrying. But it is not inevitable. We can change the outcome and we can make it more likely that the economy grows. And what's important is, first of all, that we need to help people struggling with the cost of living. I would immediately reverse the national insurance increase. I would also have a temporary moratorium on the green energy levy to save people money on fuel bills. But I'd also keep corporation tax low to make sure that we are attracting investment into our economy and doing all we can to avoid a recession.
There we go, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak debating last night. Well, as prices rise in the capital, new figures show that the average rent in London is currently £815 a month, compared with an average of £708 last year. Mayor of London Sadiq Khan called for a rent freeze in the capital, stating he has repeatedly asked the government to let him freeze rents, and the cost of living is making the issue more urgent than ever. Well, the statistics were from the Spare Room Rental Index, and they show that Eltham and Mottingham are the worst affected London boroughs, with a 19.8% rise, followed by Lower Edmonton. Figures from 2021 show London renters spent around 40% of their monthly salary on rent, compared to those in the rest of England who spent just 23%. Now, Archie Battersby's parents have lost a High Court bid to have him transferred to a hospice before his life support is withdrawn. The 12-year-old has been in a coma since he was found unconscious by his mother in April and is currently receiving life-sustaining treatment at the Royal London Hospital in Whitechapel, East London. His parents have fought a long-running legal battle over the withdrawal of his treatment, which ultimately failed this week when the European Court of Human Rights refused to intervene. Well, his mother Holly Dance and father Paul Battersby launched an urgent bid to have him transferred to a hospice, but in a ruling this morning, judges concluded it was not in Archie's best interest to be moved after doctors said Archie's condition is too unstable for a transfer. Well, Archie's family have now lodged an appeal. A 15-year-old boy has died in a stabbing in North London. Officers were called to Highbury Fields in Islington just before 9 p.m. yesterday. The boy was treated at the scene by paramedics before being taken to hospital, where he sadly died a short time later. There have been no arrests so far, and the Met Police are appealing for more information. Police also said the cordon surrounding Highbury Fields will be in place, possibly for a couple of days. The mother of a 7-year-old boy who died in an arson attack has appealed for help in finding her son's killers 4 years on from the blaze. Joel Uri died in August 2018 after a fire tore through the house where he lived with his mother Iroefe O. Edu and older sister in Deptford, southeast London. Edu and her daughter managed to escape from a first-floor window, but Joel never followed. The murder investigation is ongoing amid reports that his brother might have been the target of a criminal gang and the arson attack could have been gang-related. Well, Joel's 21-year-old brother Sam Uri was stabbed in a fight outside the property on the 11th of June 2018. Edu and detectives are appealing to anyone who has information to come forward. The London Ambulance Service has confirmed that a shooting by the Metropolitan Police took place in southeast London this afternoon. At 2:30 p.m, police received multiple reports of a man with a firearm in Creek Road between Greenwich Town Centre and Deptford. Firearms officers attended the scene. The man was located and a police firearm was discharged, and the man sustained a gunshot injury. The public have been asked to avoid the area. Croydon Council has opposed the extension of the ultra-low emission zone to outer London boroughs. The council say the ULEZ expansion would have a disproportionate impact on local communities and residents. Transport for London's recent consultation on proposals to expand ULEZ to outer boroughs by autumn 2023 would mean vehicles that don't meet the standards would need to pay a £12.50 daily charge to drive in the zone. Well, Croydon Council said they are committed to environmental protection, but believes the key is to improve infrastructure and sustainable public transport. Well, City Hall said 5 million people in outer London would breathe cleaner air as a result of expanding the ULEZ. Now let's just take a look at sport for you. And the Premier League season gets underway tonight with a London derby to kick us off under the lights. Arsenal travel to face Crystal Palace at Selhurst Park. Well, let's take an in-depth look at both teams and see how they match up.
The good season will be to improve ourselves from last year. I think players individually and collectively, we want to be in a better place. We want to play a better football. We want to be more competitive. That has to be the challenge for us. We have to raise the bar and be more demanding on ourselves to be more competitive.
They showed last season how tough they are, how difficult they are to beat, and how consistent they were at home, especially against the big teams. That they got some great results. They had that result against us, and hopefully we learned a lot of lessons that day, because especially 30 minutes that we had on that game were nowhere near the standards that we needed, and we paid the price for it.
There we go, that match kicks off at 8 o'clock at Selhurst Park. Well, just before we take a look at the weekend's weather, Londoners have been told to prepare for a second heat wave in a month, with temperatures said to be over 30 degrees for the most of next week. The Met Office said heat wave conditions would not see the extremes of July's record-breaking hot spell of 40 degrees in West London, but did say that there is no end in sight for the prolonged dry weather. Well, let's take a look at this weekend's weather in more detail then now. It's going to continue to be a warm evening, staying comfortable overnight with temperatures on average around 12 degrees. Tomorrow morning is a very sunny start to the day, with temperatures reaching 25 degrees by mid-afternoon. Looking ahead to the end of the weekend, Sunday is looking even warmer. Sun all day and temperatures reaching 27, potentially higher, as we mentioned, maybe reaching the 30s. Well, just before the break, let's bring you this. Students at a London university say a proposed sculpture by Sir Anthony Gormley could hurt the image and reputation of the institution, and we'll leave you to figure out why. The 20-foot high piece is named Alert and is set to be installed this summer at Imperial College London's campus in South Kensington, West London. Well, Gormley has described the figure as balancing on the balls of the feet, squatting and surveying the world. But Imperial College Union say that while the artist's intended form may evoke our community of scientific research, the phallic interpretation does not. Well, you can let us know what you see by joining the conversation across our social channels on @LondonLive. Well, it's time for a break now, but when we come back, more on the Conservative leadership race as we look at the week in Westminster and the world of politics with John Johnston from Politics Home. See you soon.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us @LondonLive. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us @LondonLive. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us @LondonLive.
Welcome back to London Live News. It's time now to take a look at the world of politics in the week in Westminster with Politics Home. Well, joining me now is John Johnston. John, thank you so much for being here. Let's start with the race for the Conservative leadership. Let's start with Liz Truss. A lot of headlines this week about a U-turn on her proposal to cut public sector pay. Just tell us what happened.
Yeah, she came out with this policy with a plan to cut billions from the kind of civil service. And the way that she was looking at doing that was introducing regional pay bodies, essentially that people working in the public sector, nurses, police officers, civil servants, would get pay that was linked to where they lived. So outside of London, areas where it's a little bit cheaper to live, you know, there would be a kind of review of their pay. But, you know, very quickly, within about 12 hours, she had to dump the policy because there was a massive and I think expected backlash. She sort of blamed it on the media, said that it was misrepresented. But the fact that she dumped the policy so quickly, I think, shows that they made a bit of a tactical error on that one, and she was forced to dump it.
How much of a setback do you think this U-turn may be on Truss's leadership campaign?
I mean, it was definitely a kind of difficult day. They were really getting slated for it, and Rishi Sunak's campaign obviously jumped on it. One of his supporters, you know, said this would be equivalent to levelling down the country in opposition to their whole plan to level up. So it was quite a kind of dicey day, but you know, she seems to have kind of recovered. She's still leading on the polls against Rishi Sunak, so a bit of a speed bump, but not the kind of real disaster that it could have been for her campaign if she'd sort of pressed on with it, I think.
Right, well, moving on to Rishi Sunak then. This week we heard a few more of his plans if he were to get leadership of the Conservatives. We heard that he has a plan for critics of Britain. Just remind us what happened.
Yeah, he came out with this this plan to sort of expand the prevent strategy and kind of countering extremism by saying it should be looked at to sort of expand this to people who vilify Britain. Again, it was a kind of a weird announcement. There didn't seem to have been a whole lot of thought that went into it. You know, he hasn't had to drop it, but I don't think it's really very workable. There wasn't a lot of detail attached to the policy. It felt more like his attempt to try and, you know, get ahead of the agenda. As I said, he's struggling against Liz Truss. And sometimes in campaigns, when that happens, they come up with these sort of catchy lines, but there doesn't tend to be too much substance behind it. So I can't imagine we'll kind of hear much more about the plan, because roundly I think people thought it didn't really work. There wasn't much substance to it, and not really something you could implement very easily.
Well, what was the reaction to this policy within Westminster as such?
Yeah, I mean, there was concerns from journalists, there was concerns from pressure groups, there was concerns from MPs as well, really looking at this policy and thinking, well, what do you mean by this? And we never really got a satisfactory answer for that. You know, obviously the prevent strategy, big part of the government's anti-terrorism and countering extremism strategy. But, you know, it's very much done at a policing level. It's very much done at a security service level. And it's very difficult to just sort of come up with some fairly vague plan for expanding it without really going into the detail. And because he didn't do that, he kind of faced some tough questions over it. And I just don't think it's something that he's going to want to keep talking about very much.
Absolutely right. Well, finally then, the cost of living crisis rumbles on. The Bank of England warned yesterday that Britain might be heading for a recession. What was the reaction in Westminster?
I mean, there's real concern. You know, we've seen this happening over the summer since Boris Johnson announced he was leaving. You know, people have described this almost as a zombie government. They're not really tackling the issues that are happening in the country. Now, that's very often the case when these leadership campaigns happen. Prime ministers tend not to make sort of big decisions while they're waiting to kind of leave Downing Street. But we're in a fairly unique position. You know, inflation is rising and is expected to rise further. The Bank of England have put up interest rates to, you know, kind of record highs in the last couple of decades. These are massive problems that the country is facing. And the Prime Minister is not really engaged. The Chancellor is on holiday and not really talking about it very much. And there feels like a bit of a disconnect even with the leadership campaign. You know, they're coming up with ideas, for how to deal with the economy, but the situation seems to be changing a lot faster than they can react to it.
Absolutely. Well, John Johnston, thank you so much for joining us on London Live News for a roundup of the week in Westminster. That was John Johnston from Politics Home there. Now, a new study from Virgin Startup has found that 1 in 3 women said a lack of confidence would stop them from starting a business, versus only 18% of men who said the same. Though many women say they want to be their own boss and owning a business is a lifelong dream, family issues and how they may be perceived as a leader is still getting in the way. Well, earlier I spoke to Londoner Lola. She's the co-founder of Tawani Heritage, about finding the confidence to leave a 9-to-5 and set up her own sustainable hair extension business.
So I am the co-founder, along with my very good friend Carol, of Tawani Heritage. We are an online hair extensions retailer. The special thing about our hair extensions is that they are recyclable. We specialise in synthetic hair extensions, particularly for women with afro and curly hair textures. And what we're really proud of is that we're the first in the UK to offer a scheme where customers can recycle their synthetic hair extensions. We accept any brand, they send them back to us, and we make sure they're disposed of properly. The problem with synthetic hair extensions in general is that they're typically difficult to recycle, and they often get thrown out in household waste and then end up in landfill, adding to our existing plastic problem and contributing about 21,000 tonnes to UK landfill every single year. So it's a big problem.
So when you set out to launch your business, did you have a regular job beforehand? By regular, I mean a regular 9-to-5.
Yes, yeah, I did. And until very recently, we still were both working a regular 9-to-5. And just in the last couple of months, actually, we made the decision to basically resign from our roles and try and really give the business 100%.
Well, we're talking about, confidence, and that 1 in 3 female founders feel confidence is a barrier to starting their own business. How was it for you starting the business? Did you feel a lack of confidence? Were you scared to make that move?
I was, yes. I think it's natural to feel nervous about doing something like this. There's obvious risks involved, and I think there's the sort of females in general are less confident to do these things. I think it can be challenging because you're trying to mitigate the risk, the financial risk that you're potentially taking, but with also trying to kind of manage and navigate a new space where you think you might excel and do better than what you're doing in your 9-to-5. So it's a difficult balance to strike. There's also a massive time investment, and I think that that's really challenging, especially if you're a mother. There's a lot of mum guilt, as they call it, that you feel like potentially you're neglecting your children and not giving them as much time and attention as you would like. And then if you have a partner, naturally, if you're less present, then your partner is having to take on much more of a prominent role when it comes to childcare, and then you feel guilty for that reason as well.
Absolutely. So there's a lot tied up there with women, how women specifically might feel a lack of confidence when they're, starting out on their own. You mentioned that there are some risks. What are some of the biggest hurdles that you've had to overcome, would you say?
Yeah, so I mentioned the financial side of things because obviously if you have a regular income, then there's a certain degree of security that comes with that. So obviously if you then resign from your role and you haven't got a necessarily regular income, then that's obviously challenging in terms of your day-to-day expenses, your living expenses, etc. I think as well, even in an industry where you feel that you know it quite well, so this is Afro hair extensions. Obviously, I'm a woman of color. I've used these hair extensions. I am potentially my own customer, so to speak. But I think the challenge is until you're in the actual process and until you're actually sort of running a business and you're learning so much as you move forward in your journey, you can't possibly know everything. And I think that's a real challenge. You're always going to be, to some extent, even if it's an industry that you understand well, you're always going to be navigating a bit of an unknown, and that's scary.
Absolutely. Well, finally, Lola, what advice would you give a woman who is thinking about starting her own business but was maybe feeling a lack of confidence to make that move?
I would definitely say that tapping into the resources that I mentioned, there's lots out there. I think the first thing is that there's a lot more available than you probably realise. I know there was a lot more available than we realised. So I think the first thing is just understanding that there is help out there, that you can do this. I think there's such a tendency for us women particularly to have a bit of a negative self-dialogue and to almost play it safe because we're worried about the risks that I mentioned earlier on. So I think definitely making sure that you surround yourself with people that can help you. I think, even if you meet somebody who isn't necessarily the right fit at that particular moment, I think making a connection and who that potential connection can lead you to is incredibly invaluable. Also surround yourself. I certainly didn't come from a business background. So I think surround yourself with people that understand business. You might understand your industry, but you might not necessarily understand business, which was the case for myself and Carol. So definitely make sure that you're tapping into the right resources and making sure that you're surrounding yourself with people that know some of the stuff that you don't know about. And then I think as well, it's all a risk. It's taking the plunge, resigning from your role, starting a business. It's all a risk. And I think you have to some extent, get comfortable with taking risks. And obviously just make sure that you're as informed as you can before you make any decision.
There we are. That was Lola, the co-founder of that sustainable hair extension company. And you can find out more by visiting tawanyheritage.com. You're watching London Live News with Helena Wadia. A reminder of our top story coming up after the break. Plus, the football community joins Prostate Cancer UK in a marathon march across the capital to unite against the most common cancer in men. We'll be hearing about the event.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to London Live News, a reminder of some of the stories affecting Londoners today. A clip has emerged of Conservative leadership contender Rishi Sunak saying he diverted public money from deprived urban areas towards more prosperous towns by changing public funding formulas. Well, the New Statesman, who obtained the video, said the comments were made to grassroots Tories in Kent last week. Labour called the remarks scandalous, but Mr Sunak's campaign defended the video, saying levelling up isn't just about city centres, it's also about towns all over the country that need help too. That's what he changed in the Green Book, and he will follow through as Prime Minister. Well, it comes as Sunak tries to make up ground against Foreign Secretary Liz Truss to win the backing of party members who will choose our next Prime Minister. Well, on Sky News' debate last night, he warned Truss's economic strategy will damage the nation after she insisted her tax cuts could avert the recession forecast by the Bank of England.
Liz said something before, which I'm just going to correct. It's not the tax burden that is causing the recession. That's simply wrong. What's causing the recession is inflation. Right? That's the root of the problems we have, not just here, but in America and elsewhere. So the way we're going to get through this, first and foremost, is gripping inflation. Now, we will, and I always have stood by people, as you've seen me over the last couple of years, so I will help people get through the autumn and the winter, as I've done before, and then we will make the right reforms to help grow the economy in the long term. And I don't think the corporate tax proposals...
So you would come up with more money to help people get through the hardship?
Of course I would.
Do you know how much?
Well, we'll have to see the size of the problem. But look, people can see
13.3% inflation is what's predicted. That's the size of the problem.
And I don't want that to be worse. And I don't want it to last longer. So what I'm not going to do is embark on a borrowing spree worth tens of billions of pounds, put that on the country's credit card, ask our kids and our grandkids to pick up the tab, because that's not right, it's not responsible, and it's certainly not Conservative.
Well, what the Bank of England have said today is, of course, extremely worrying. But it is not inevitable. We can change the outcome and we can make it more likely that the economy grows. And what's important is, first of all, that we need to help people struggling with the cost of living. I would immediately reverse the national insurance increase. I would also have a temporary moratorium on the green energy levy to save people money on fuel bills. But I'd also keep corporation tax low to make sure that we are attracting investment into our economy and doing all we can to avoid a recession.
There we go, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak debating last night. Well, as prices rise in the capital, new figures show that the average rent in London is currently £815 a month, compared with an average of £708 last year. Mayor of London Sadiq Khan called for a rent freeze in the capital, stating he has repeatedly asked the government to let him freeze rents, and the cost of living is making the issue more urgent than ever. Well, the statistics were from the Spare Room Rental Index, and they show that Eltham and Mottingham are the worst affected London boroughs, with a 19.8% rise, followed by Lower Edmonton. Figures from 2021 show London renters spent around 40% of their monthly salary on rent, compared to those in the rest of England who spent just 23%. Now, let's take a look at this. For the 6th time, the football community are hosting a series of marathon marches to unite against the most common cancer in men. Prostate Cancer UK will be walking 4 routes across the country, with London hosting the finale on Sunday, the 25th of September. The charity are looking for people to get involved as well for the route, which starts at AFC Wimbledon's ground and finishes at Millwall. Well, Henry spoke to one of the organisers about the importance of the walk.
So Prostate Cancer UK for the 6th year will be back with the Football March. So the Football March is a series of marathon distance walks between football clubs, and Prostate Cancer UK will be starting off in Greater Manchester on September the 22nd, and then we'll be going to the South Coast up to the Midlands, and the finale will be in London on Saturday the 25th of September. So we'll be uniting football fans up and down the country to take on a marathon distance with their mates and meet like-minded people from opponent football clubs.
Of course, it's a great initiative, all these walks. Now, just how serious is the issue that you're trying to raise awareness for?
So prostate cancer is the most common cancer in men, and Prostate Cancer UK has a simple ambition, and that is to stop prostate cancer from devastating lives. It is a cause that affects 1 in 8 men and 1 in 4 black men. And our work to fund life-saving research will go to early diagnosis and treatment. And we've also got a specialist nurses helpline where people who might be concerned about their risk can get in touch and find out more information.
I think with men there's always a sort of, I don't know why or quite what it is, but they find it very hard to either go to the doctor or anything like that. Why do men find it so difficult to chat about, you know, their own health issues?
Prostate Cancer UK promotes the risk that men might be facing. So men over 50, men with a family history, and black men are at an increased risk. And the role of Prostate Cancer UK is to get men talking about it. If they're at risk, to talk to their doctors, to look at our website, prostatecanceruk.org, and to have open conversations with their mates and their families to make more people aware of their risk.
So this has been going on for a few years, as you mentioned earlier. Why football grounds? Is that the target audience, do you think?
Yes, it is. We've got a huge football community. We've got partners in football. We've got celebrities, ambassadors, influencers, and we are uniting football fans and for a great cause. So we are going up and down the country to various football clubs. Football fans might be rivals on the pitch, but off the pitch, they are united, and we are bringing football fans together, the football family, as we call it, to raise money, raise awareness.
Of course, the finale is in London. What's the route then that they'll be taking in September?
The London route on September the 25th will be starting at Wimbledon, and we'll be going to Fulham and ending at Millwall. However, there might be a few football clubs in between and a few ambassadors, influencers, celebrities along the way. Watch this space.
You're looking to get people involved as well, aren't you? You're looking for new recruits.
We're looking for more football fans to join us on Sunday, the 25th of September. We will be walking a marathon that will be sore on the feet, but it will be an absolute laugh. And there's one common cause that everybody will be walking for, and that is prostate cancer. We want to stop prostate cancer from being a killer. We're bringing the football family together, friends, family, celebrities, influencers, and it is going to be a day to remember.
There we go. Well, that walk is on the 25th of September here in the capital. And to get involved, do go to the Prostate Cancer UK website to find out more. You're watching London Live News. Time for a final break now, but when we come back, our resident art reviewer James Nichols will be here to tell us about the best exhibitions on across the capital, from the African fabrics at the V&A to surrealism at the Tate Modern. Don't miss it.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to the final part of London Live News. Time now for a look at the best exhibitions on in the capital with our resident art critic, James Nichols.
Welcome to this edition of the Art Review with my recommendations of art exhibitions to enjoy in London at this time. So first we go to Africa Fashion at the V&A. It's powerful, rich in heritage with relevance and impact for today. Featuring mid-20th century acclaimed creatives to the new generation of groundbreaking designers, artists and stylists, photographers and music of today. Africa Fashion has extensive displays of garments, textiles, personal testimonies, photographs, art and film, all which celebrate the vitality and innovation of creators from over 20 countries. Homage is also made to the African independence years from the 1950s to 1994, which sparked radical political and social impact across the continent. The section on politics and poetics of cloth display innovative materials and how the making and wearing of indigenous cloths at the time of independence became a political act. It's also great to see the works by small-scale artisan makers that specialize in crafts such as hand dyeing, weaving, beading and embroidery, and also the recycling of materials that are preserving traditional textile crafts skills. The Gods of the Wilderness section powerfully references ancient West African masquerade costumes, and we see the importance of African spirituality and the relationship with ancestors reflected throughout the show. The Salt of the Earth collection examines talismanic properties of jewelry and the storytelling ability of materials drawn from nature. Africa Fashion explores the vitality and global impact of the fashion and art scene as varied and dramatic as the continent itself. Africa Fashion at the V&A is on until April next year. Now to another fascinating exhibition, Surrealism Beyond Borders at the Tate. It's radical, revolutionary, mind-bending, fantastical and disconcerting. One critic calls it a raging sea of glorious strangeness. Surrealism is not a style, but a state of mind. It aims to subvert reality, to find the uncanny in the everyday, and it taps into our unconscious desires and brings dreams to life. For many artists around the world, it has been a way to imagine and create their vision of a new world. The revolutionary concept sparked in Paris in 1924, and Surrealism delved into the unconscious and the dreams over the familiar and everyday, from Salvador Dali's famous lobster telephone to René Magritte's extraordinary otherworld works. However, this is not all about the big-name artists, as it includes many not in the mainstream, but who deserve a place in this show. This show is based on extensive research undertaken by the Tate and the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. It spans 80 years and 50 countries to show how Surrealism inspired and united artists around the globe. This dynamic movement took root in so many places in different times, offering artists a serious weapon in the struggle of political, social, and personal freedom, and to challenge authority. Many of these artworks have never been on show in the UK, and what a platform for discussion and debate they are. Fantastical and disconcerting. Surrealism Beyond Borders is on at the Tate Modern until the 29th of August. Finally, we visit Our Time on Earth at the Barbican. We are now experiencing the rapid impact of climate change. But what can we as individuals do? Well, this show addresses the power of global creativity. So through art, design, science, music and philosophy, we are presented with a range of radical visions for the future with consideration of other species. Collaborating on Our Time on Earth are renowned scientists, ecologists, architects, artists, engineers, and researchers who all present us with the collaboration across disciplines to tackle climate changes together. Our Time on Earth offers a number of visions of how the world might look if we're able to rethink our place and to reconsider our sense of interconnectedness to the wonder of the natural world and the universe beyond. So we are encouraged to be aware and to leave feeling empowered that we can make changes in what we do and look to countless possibilities of a positive alternative future for generations to come. Our Time on Earth is on at the Barbican until the 29th of August. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you next time for the Art Review. Goodbye.
There we go, that was James Nichols with the Art Review looking at some of those fantastic exhibitions. Now, a new action comedy has been released starring Brad Pitt and Sandra Bullock. It follows 5 assassins on board a fast-moving train from Tokyo to Moriyaka. Well, on that trip, they find out their missions all have something in common. Well, we had a look at the premiere this week to find out more from the actors themselves.
Talk to me.
I am ready. You are getting the new and improved me. Because if you put peace out in the world, you get peace back.
I think you might be forgetting what you do for a living. Take the gun.
Every job I do, somebody dies. I'm not that guy anymore.
Some conflicts require a gun.
This film is really meticulously curated in post because there are all of those plant reveals, small character arcs, connections to these characters in this sort of a philosophical way, and you really, and I wanted to leave the breadcrumbs for the audience to understand it. And so that has to be clear, but then there's all these laughs and action and things that you can enjoy in a separate layer. So there's these 2 layers running, like this sort of sophisticated fable of fate and how we're all connected, and then a great some summer fun popcorn movie at the top. So I think that's what was really exciting about it.
Hi. There's a gun on.
Shh, run. It's the quiet car. Gotta use your small inside voice in here, son.
There's a gun.
It really felt like we were fated to be together at this time because, like I said, when we did it, it was like October of 2020 when we were like in peak bleak in the pandemic, you know? And so to be able to get out of that and do this feature together and to play, it felt like we were all fated to be there. Like it was our own little tribe when we got together. And I know that I had spoken it out into existence that I wanted to work with both of these men because they're just incredibly talented. You know, everyone was going through it at that time, and that was, you know, the best thing about this script is that we read something that made us laugh out loud, that excited us, that really made us want to leave our house and make it come to fruition. So yeah, that's how you get Bullet Train.
I mean, I think you sort of touched on it there. I was going to say, was it cathartic punching each other in the face? I mean,
it was the best release ever, wasn't it? Do you know what I mean? Refreshing.
Amazing. I didn't get enough punches. Like, yeah, it was great.
Next time.
Kicking more.
Yeah, he's more of a kicker.
Yeah.
She's a woman who doesn't need to use her fists. Her brain is her weapon, and so she has this little oh, I'm just a college student, just like an innocent girl, couldn't hurt anyone exterior, so that she can really manipulate and orchestrate and just be so evil and terrible.
But it's delightful, though. It's really enjoyable to watch.
It's so delightful, I agree.
But I guess when you play a character, it's not often a character like this comes along that sort of owns that devious side and is just so... Was that quite an empowering thing?
Yes, I think it's so fun to play the villain because you can really just let yourself have fun. It just allows you as an actor to kind of play around and do things you definitely wouldn't normally do when you're playing just a normal person or a normal girl, or, you know, you get to take some big swings and really just play with your own skill set.
It's just great summer fun, you know. We're out about it again. It's summer, we can go in the theater and laugh with each other, and it's perfect.
Yeah, man, get your popcorn, get your milk duds, get some free AC, go watch Bullet Train. It's the thing to do. It's the best thing to do this summer.
いかがですか?
Oh, no, thank you. You know what? Do you have anything sparkling? That's the one. Thank you. Domo arigato. Sure you want to talk this out? Not particularly, no. Okay.
There we go, that's Bullet Train, which is out in cinemas now. Time for a final check on the weather for you now. It's going to continue to be a warm evening, staying comfortable overnight with temperatures on average 12 degrees. Tomorrow morning, it's a very sunny start to the day with temperatures reaching 25 degrees by mid-afternoon. Looking ahead to the end of the weekend, Sunday is looking even warmer, sun all day and temperatures reaching 27. The clouds seem to have disappeared because it looks like more of the same on Monday, sunny and temperatures in the high 20s. Well, that's all from us this evening, and we'll be back early tomorrow morning for London's weekend. A look back at the week and a few ideas of things to see and do in the capital. Also, check out our social media for more news from across the capital. That's at London Live. From me and the rest of the team, have a lovely weekend.